So I want to talk about this shit because it's like 1 in the morning and I got nothing better to do. Um, so I know I'm late, and I know this episode's passed already, and we talked about it a lot in the Pokepod. You should go watch that. It's every Monday at 9 p.m. Central. But plug aside, I want to talk about logic for a second. More specifically, I want to talk about anime and video game logic. Now, for those of y'all who are just joining in, first of all, hi, how you doing? Wipe your feet. I just wiped that floor. Anyway, for those of y'all who are joining in, you're probably thinking, well, what the hell are you talking about? Anime logic, game logic, what is all this? I'm talking more specifically about Pokemon. And if you don't know what that is, you were born probably before 1980, or you just lived under a rock for almost 20 to 30 years. Anyway, Pokemon. So Pokemon's a video game franchise, it's an anime franchise, it's a trading card game franchise, it's a marketing conglomerate, and it's a marketing colossus. Pokemon, everybody loves Pokemon. You love Pokemon, I love Pokemon. Even if you don't love Pokemon, you just shut up. You love Pokemon, you just don't know it yet. Pokemon, it is a video game series first, and then everything else just sort of follows up after it. And because of that, Pokemon was so widely popular in order to get people to, buy the video games, and by extension the trading cards, toys, and all the other things. They had to sell it, and the best way to sell it was to, make an anime of it. Anime's hot, and even at that point in the late 90s, anime was definitely a thing that was starting to become familiarized in not just like Japan, but in the West. So we as an audience members wound up, getting into Pokemon mostly because of the TV show, with the video games following suit, or some people vice versa, but definitely the anime, the cartoon, as some people would call it. And we start all the way from the beginning. Now, obviously, since the two coincide with each other, the video games and then the anime came out, the video game follows these very strict rules that may have been foreign to some people who don't get the concept of a turn-based RPG. And a lot of those rules were implemented into the anime. Certain Pokemon can't attack certain other Pokemon, obviously, and it's going on pretty much science and logic. Like, a fire type attack won't do a lot of damage to a water type Pokemon, only because, like, fire gets doused by water. So logically, why would fire do a lot of damage to water, right? So, same logics, and they sort of bounce back and forth for a while. And obviously there was this one moment in the anime that a lot of people remember, at least in the first series of Pokemon, the original series, the Gotta Catch 'Em All series, OS, whatever you want to call it, where Ash fights off against Blaine. Now, the reason I'm pointing this one out specifically, and not like Pikachu fighting off against Brox, Onix, and Geodude, is because there's outside factors in that one. Like, Pikachu ends up attacking the sprinklers end up dousing rocks with water, and water conducts electricity, and thus Pikachu's able to hurt them. Like, as bullshit as it is, that's a scientific way to come at it. But I'm bringing up the Blaine fight more specifically because Pikachu does a thing here that pretty much like flips the table on a lot of things we see here nowadays that we're dealing with. And that action is that Pikachu ends up using Thunderbolt. And normally it wouldn't do any damage to Rhydon because Rhydon's a ground type Pokemon, and ground Pokemon are immune. However, Pikachu does this one thing where he attacks the horn. And when he attacks the horn, it does damage to Rhydon, specifically because Brock states that Rhydon's using his horn as a lightning rod. Now, I find that extra ironic considering the fact that in the anime, or at least in the video games later on, Rhydon actually gets an ability called Lightning Rod. And if Lightning Rod worked the same way it did in the video games back in that episode, Pikachu would be extra screwed because Lightning Rod completely knocks out electricity moves and adds special attack on the Rhydon. Rhydon's not a special attacker, but the point is that the electric attack wouldn't even exist. So Rhydon has like a double resistance to Thunderbolt, right? Like, even if you took the ability away, he still, like, is just naturally resistant to this shit. But obviously, as time passed, the reason that the anime and video games never caused conflict with the rules was because a lot of people back at this point sort of just dismissed the rules of the anime and the video games because the video games were still relatively new. Like, it's the first generation. Video games were perfect. Hell, focus energy was a move that made critical attacks not work anymore rather than raise the ability of it. Like, the game in and of itself didn't even have its own fucking logic put together at this point. So there was no way in hell that, you know, if it can't get its corrective shit together, and the anime can pretty much have the freedom to do whatever it wants and never really took its battles seriously up until Ash finally made it to, like, the Pokemon League, then there's no way we can expect the two to coincide with each other. No one cared. Pikachu could do some wild shit in the anime, but no one would really take that into account. If anything, the anime made the video games more confusing, because later on, when Pokemon were solid rock types, we thought that they were immune to electricity, when in fact rock types weren't weak to electricity. It was ground types that were resistant to electricity. It's just that every rock type Pokemon in Gen 1 also shared the ground type trait. So we move up a little bit and we move on to the AG series. Now, once we hit this point, it's very clear that the anime wants to follow the video game logic a little bit more. The video game's mechanics have changed a little bit. You know, things are getting a bit more smoothed out now that we've been through 2 generations of Pokemon. Abilities are being taken into account a little bit more now, and we're reaching this point in which the games and anime are starting to coincide with each other, just based strictly on the fact that, you know, Pokemon has like a actual structure now. It's not just the video game isn't doing some random broken shit and the anime isn't doing some random broken shit. It's the reason why Pikachu openly learns Iron Tail rather than rely on weird bullshit in order to get its Thunderbolts off on Rock-type Pokemon. It's learning Iron Tail essentially so that it can cover its Rock-type disadvantages. So then we move forward into that and we know that, like, the game and anime are starting to follow each other. But then something weird happens. Swellow decides to use the Thunder as armor.
Jesus Christ.
Now, some people have actually taken this up as, yo, it's Swellow simply using the ability Guts and using that to power itself up, which can be believable. That's not out of the realm of believability. But it's very obvious that at this point, the anime is gonna have to make some exceptions for certain rules, just simply because if it were to follow the video game to a T, fights would be boring. Or at least a lot of fights wouldn't be as visually impressive on the screen. And not to mention, some moments would be weird. It's why in X and Y, Bone Club can actually work on flying type Pokemon, because it would look weird otherwise. If Lucario makes a successful hit on a Pokemon with the Bone Club, the bone's not just gonna phase through the Pokemon. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. I mean, it's only that move for real that ends up working. Moves like Earth Power and Earthquake and things like that typically aren't used on flying type Pokemon because, you know, flying type Pokemon are in the air and thus have the advantage of flying over that shit. But moves like Bone Club and Boomerang are physical items that just happen to share the ground typing, and thus they have to hit if they hit. It's not gonna make any sense otherwise. Now, I said all of that because I wanted to lead up to the moment and the current series, Pokemon Journeys, that's causing a bit of a controversy. So, the fight in question is Ash versus Volkner. And the fight is pretty much towards its butt end. Ash has been getting his ass kicked pretty much the whole fight, but due to miracles, he's just sort of able to win. His Lucario is able to tough it out, regardless of the fact that it's been getting the shit ever living kicked out of it for pretty much the fight. But Pikachu's the last Pokemon to fight off against Electivire, and Ash has an ace up his sleeve or on his wrist, or he's got Pikachunium Z, that thing from Sun and Moon that allows him to sort of just destroy things. Well, Pikachu uses the 1 million Thunderbolt or whatever the fuck it's called, and Electivire has this little ability known as Motor Drive. Now, the ability in question in the video games makes it so Electivire can pretty much absorb electricity and increase his own speed. So he pretty much gets a free immunity to all electric attacks and in addition a speed boost because of it. Now logically, this attack should work on Electivire, and realistically, the 1 million Thunderbolts should just disappear, Electivire be alright, chucks Pikachu in the stomach with a fire punch, and the fight's over. But that doesn't happen. Apparently, Pikachu's 1 million Thunderbolt attack is so powerful that it's able to override Electivire and thus take him out and knock him out. Now, you could imagine the shit fire that happened on Twitter after this. People are going back and forth. People are saying that the anime logic follows anime logic and not video game logic. People are saying that they're doing video game moves and Electivire has a video game ability. So why even introduce it or why even entertain it if the ability doesn't even fucking work? So the argument becomes who's in the right here. But I don't think that's the issue at all. I don't think the anime logic nor video game logic is the issue at all. Because if we're following anime logic, then Volkner could very much easily have had Electivire stick its tails in the ground in order to stop the electricity. Pikachu did it. Ash had Pikachu do it in his fight against Raichu in Season 1, Electric Shock Showdown against Raichu. Paul's Electivire did this ability in Diamond and Pearl. So it's very possible that an electric Pokemon that's facing another electric Pokemon can stick its body part or appendage or tail or whatever have you into the ground in order to cancel the electricity out like a lightning rod. It's very possible. It's a very, very, very anime-ass thing to do. But Volkner didn't do it. And you can't say that he wasn't smart enough to do it or any of that, because Volkner's beating the crap out of Ash this entire fight using nothing but straight up strategies. He used a lot of good video game strategies. I mean, like, really good. Like, even for the anime, I would say these are impressively good strategies. I don't know if it's because he's able to switch Pokemon or what. The combos in question, he uses the electric terrain in order to increase rising voltage. He has Rotom use the move Hex when his other Pokemon have the ability to paralyze opponents so that the Hex does double damage. He switches out Rotom for Electivire right before Pikachu hits it so that the Electivire can absorb the Thunderbolt attack. Like, this man is just whipping his ass with all these different, like, combos. He's doing some A-player ass shit right now. So, logically, he should be doing well in the fight. And it wouldn't put it past me that he could get innovative and creative in the fight. And thus, if he's faced with a situation like, I don't know, a fucking 1 million Thunderbolt towards him, then logically he should be able to block this shit. Whether it be using the tails as a ground or finding some creative way, like using Fire Punch on the ground and the debris that comes up blocks some of the electricity to make the blow a little bit easier. But we can't do that because the last time that 1 million Thunderbolts was used, it was used against an ancient Alolan god. That was its last appearance. Anything less than that would be underwhelming. But this is Journeys we're talking about, so anything that's brought back from the past pretty much comes to die in this show. So, what does this mean? What happens here? I mean, we see this debate, and I for one, am very much in the realm of believability that there is a situation in which 1 million Thunderbolts can beat Electivire. I'm not even sitting there saying that Electivire couldn't, be overwhelmed by all the electricity. It's like filling up a water balloon with too much water. Obviously, there's only so much he can absorb before it overrides, and thus, he gets hit. I mean, Volkner even explains it at the end of the fight. I'm not willing to disbelieve that. I think the problem that I'm willing to disbelieve is how much of the anime logic is implemented in a character's favor. It feels like the entire fight is catered towards Ash using anime logic to win. Now you're probably thinking, well, yeah, it's Ash, idiot. He's the main character. He's the protagonist. But Ash is no stranger to video game combos either. It's one of the reasons why he has Gudra use Rain Dance in his fight with Clement when Gudra was paralyzed, because the ability Hydration means that Gudra can cure his own paralysis if he's in the rain. It's the reason why Ash has done these things. He's done a mixture of both anime and video game logic in his battle styles before, several times. Pikachu shoots static on opponents. He's able to teach Pikachu Iron Tail in order to counter off against Rock-type Pokemon. I mean, if we're following anime logic, then why isn't the Thunderbolts just strong enough? We've had to deal with this debate between anime and video game logic pretty much since, like, very pivotal moments in the series. In the original series, it was a Rhydon and the Lightning Rod horn thing. In AG, it was with the Thunder Armor. And Diamond and Pearl, we had like a couple of weird shenanigans. And in Best Wishes, it was the infamous Snivy fight, which I find funny because a lot of people followed video game logic and thought that it was ridiculous that Pikachu would lose to what's essentially a level 5 Snivy. But now those very same people are defending the anime for having Electivire be able to not absorb an electric powered Z move. So the question isn't, anime logic versus video game logic. The question is, how convenient is anime logic and video game logic when used under the right premise? The Best Wishes example is really good because, people were getting mad that Pikachu wasn't following video game logic in order to beat Snivy. But those very same people are arguing against Volkner winning the fight because Electivire should have just, got knocked out because it doesn't matter. It's anime, right? It's anime logic, right? Right? That shit? It's anime logic, right? It doesn't matter. The 1 million Thunderbolt is not following game logic. It's following anime logic. Well, where was this argument when Snivy beat Pikachu? Oh, that's not video game logic. Snivy's not level 5. Snivy doesn't follow levels. There's no levels in Pokemon. So Snivy should have just as much of a capability of beating Pikachu, considering the fact that Pikachu was already handicapped when the fight started. And thus, the nomenclature is born. The issue's never been video game logic versus anime logic. The anime has always been implementing video game logic into it progressively since like season 2. And has been adding video game logic in every time. Hell, the video games have been picking up on some of the anime stuff and making anime logic within the video games itself. Greninja knows Battle Bond for a reason in Sun and Moon, and that's because X and Y existed. So it's never been an issue of anime or video game logic. I'll tell you what the issue is. The issue is story placement, story writing, pacing. See, a lot of people usually wonder why X and Y is my favorite series. And it's because mostly it's very battle focused and they pay a lot of attention and detail into those battles. And a lot of people can probably dismiss battles as just being battles. But battles are very important in Pokemon, at least nowadays, because battles tell a story. It's just like a dance or watching a play. And battles, while they're not as verbal, except for when the trainers yell commands, battles tell their own story of what happens with the Pokemon, the trainer, and the implementing of strategies that's used within said battle. And when you're watching these battles, what determines a good battle and a bad battle is based on the pacing in which the battle is played out. You can see the struggles. You can see the back and forths. It's a tussle. Every story has a conflict. Every story needs a conflict. So when the conflict is well believed, received, and, able to be read, then it translates better to the audience. And sometimes it doesn't even need to be in English or Japanese or whatever language you speak because the battle itself is speaking for itself. When you're telling a story and you want to make things believable, you need to put things in it that are believable, but at the same time, don't take out the range of possibility in which the non-believable thing can happen under certain circumstances that can be fully digested towards the reader, audience, watcher, viewer, whatever have you. So, like I said, to conclusion, the issue isn't anime logic. The issue isn't video game logic. None of those things have an issue with this fight. The issue is the fight itself. The way it's written. The way it's paced. The way it looks like Ash should, in theory, be losing. But he makes a comeback. But he makes a comeback based off the most ridiculous premises. Not being the fact that he's using anime logic. It's the fact that the story's catering towards him with anime logic. He's using anime logic in a way that even for a protagonist seems kind of bullshitty, just simply because it's only working in Ash's favor here. There was no point in this fight in which Ash should have won. This fight was completely against Ash in both anime and video game logic, following both of them. I've seen Ash go through a lot worse and actually lose a fight, or a lot less and actually lose a fight. I've seen him win fights under hard premises too, but at least in those there was a level of believability in which you could easily buy the story. He found some trump card, exposed some weakness, studied and analyzed his opponent, whereas here, he's just sort of powering through. There's no point in which Ash deserved to win this at all. And thus, that's why the problem becomes the episode itself. The fight is the problem, not the logic in which the fight follows. The fight's following both logic. Volkner is very much sitting behind video game logic while Ash is following anime logic. But when you have a series in which the main character has followed both logics several times, and his opponents have even followed anime logic, then you run into this back and forth that just isn't cohesive enough in order for the reader, watcher, viewer, or whatever have you to sit and enjoy the story. And that's where the problem lies. This fight wasn't evenly matched at all. It was very clear Ash was supposed to lose here. You can see it on screen. And you could probably make some arguments on how this isn't the case. But then you would have to make those exact same arguments for Volkner. Why didn't Luxray just power through most of those moves? Luxray got hit 3 times. How come his shonen power-up didn't kick in and he just trucked through it? Lucario gets hit with multiple air cutters, which are his weakness, but he's able to ride through the fight and fight while being paralyzed. I mean, Ash had Gudra heal his paralyzation in X and Y using hydration. Why didn't he just have Gudra power through paralyzation? It doesn't matter, right? Anime logic, right? But no, he openly chooses to cure his paralysis so that he can have a better chance at fighting. Because he knows if he fights him paralyzed, he's going to lose. So the same logic is done here. And it should be. Because it's better believable for the story that it's trying to tell. But I've rambled on long enough about it. What do you think? I mean, I know I'm usually the person that a lot of people just say hates journeys, and I'm not trying to be. I just, when it comes down to it, I know a lot about storytelling, and when something doesn't tell a good story, it just bugs me. Analytics aside, like, looking at something and believing the story that's being told is usually a good step in enjoying the story that you're engaged in. It's hard to be engaged in something when what you're looking at feels like a visual mess. So that being said, maybe I'll ramble on about other stuff. I don't know. Depends if it's 1 o'clock again.